I'm joined with Ian Harris from Libero Copper here at the Beaver Creek Precious Metals Summit. Ian, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's really exciting to be here, not only with you, but here at probably one of the most exciting Beaver Creeks in years, right?
Yeah, you know, it's crazy. This morning I woke up, gold's hitting all-time highs. We're starting to catch a little bit of a bid in copper, obviously. Silver above $30. You would think everybody here is all happy and rosy, but I walk around, I don't really see that euphoria. What's your read on the market?
Well, I mean, I've been here enough years that in years past it was, man, I hope it starts getting better, but what happens if it gets worse? What are you going to do if it gets worse? And this time it's sort of like, what do I do to make my shares go up? It's more a focus on, there's an optimism that something's going on and everybody's trying to think about how to get things up and moving, but the catalysts are there, the backdrop is there, so I'm very optimistic about the near-term opportunities in the industry.
So let's talk about copper. You guys obviously are a copper play out of Colombia, and we're going to get into that in a minute. I love to ask guys who have decided that they are going to devote their life to a particular commodity, which you are for at least this portion of your life, I assume, if you're taking on the role of CEO. What's your thesis for copper? Why are you excited about it?
Well, I'll start that. When I first graduated, I worked for ASARCO in their management development program. So I started in copper, loved copper, because I like being part of something that you feel is going towards something like the industrialization or electrification of the planet. So that's really the backdrop. Independent if you believe in global warming or what's happening, the demand for electricity is increasing, and more electricity means more copper, right? And a higher percentage need, right? Whether it's the bricks coming out into middle class, whether it's because AI demand is demanding so much power, or whether it's because we're going away from fossil fuels, copper, the backdrop in terms of demand is definitely there. And there's obviously been a massive investment overall in copper exploration, which makes a very, very interesting setup that I think gets everybody excited about what's going to happen in copper.
So let's talk about Libero Copper, relatively new issuer here in the Canadian junior markets. My understanding is that Frank Giustra basically came out of retirement from the commodities world, and he's found some horses he's going to back, and you guys are one of them. What can you tell us about the company?
Well, I'll start with, I love Frank's speech yesterday because he's famous for his timing. He's famous for his what he thinks in precious metals, but in his keynote speech saying, I love copper, right? And he was looking for amazing assets and looking to try to put together teams to advance those assets. And Libero is a little bit different. While we do have a significant asset in Colombia, it's a very large asset, lots of room to grow, right? We are more a development team on how to advance those types of projects towards a future construction decision. I personally, and a director of mine, Ernie Master, were both involved with two of the largest projects built in copper over the last 20 years. And I'm not talking about 10 of them. There's only probably 5 or 4 or 3 that have been built over the last 20 years. So we have a niche experience on how to navigate these types of projects and advance them. So there's a lot of value in discovery, but for me, that's high risk. You know, with experience and access to capital, advancing project is the other part of the curve where a lot of value can be created in the junior market. And pounds in the ground have never been cheaper, despite looking at the front cover of The Economist calling copper the new oil, right? It's a disconnect that can't go on forever.
So let's talk about your asset in Colombia. Is it called
Mocoa?
Mocoa. So your asset in Mocoa, Colombia, 636 million tons at a grade of 0.33% copper. And there's a pre-feasibility that was done back in the mid-'80s. Now I look at it and I go, okay, does that work? Do the economics work at today's prices, or is this sort of a leverage play? It's obviously got tremendous scale, but how important is the price of copper for this thesis to play out?
So on average, it's 0.45 at the metals prices that were used. At metal prices today, it's probably a 0.55 because there's a big component of moly. Okay. It's actually one of the largest undeveloped moly projects in the world, and fluctuates between 20 to 35% of the value is actually moly. And I could put it into perspective. We did put a hole into the project back in 2022, and at the time, it was the 10th best copper drill hole in the world over the last 12 months. One hole and the other holes were all from Orense and Filo de Sol. So it's got a batting average like some of the best projects, right? So I don't have to go into the individual economics. I know that the grades are very exciting and in line with some of the better projects in the world. And it's also, when you hear 600 million tons of ore, resource, before I get into trouble with a lot of people, 600 million tons of resource, what does that mean? Right? Some of the biggest mines in the world start about 30,000 tons per day. Over 20 years, that's about 200 million tons. So that's a project that's already 3 times bigger, and that gives you the perspective that it's already got some significant legs. We're definitely looking for and wanted to advance projects that will be interesting when we're seeing such a big deficit. We don't need 50 mines. It's too hard to build all of them. The bigger companies are going to be looking for larger scale projects that they can start and continue to expand over a period of time.
So, let's talk about your cap table for a second. You guys are a relatively new issuer, company headquartered out of Vancouver. Now, obviously, the retail investors that are watching this are going to go, okay, well, is there going to be a ton of cheap paper flying at me if I buy shares open market? How can I get comfort in the share structure? So what would your response to them be?
So right now, almost 30% of the shares are between management, Frank himself, who currently owns 11%, and people within that Fiore group, where he is obviously the CEO of Fiore. It's in very, very, very good hands of people that want to see these projects advance and see a valuation much, much, much higher. Frank, for example, I think on a partially diluted basis, he's at 19.9. These are committed hands that all of this setup is currently in, but it's also a setup that allows us to do new things, right? I'd say sometimes Ernie Mass and myself have been project builders, but Frank is a company builder with a larger vision, and the company has been set up for success. This is a longer-term play. It's Frank's copper vehicle. It's not a flash in the pan. It's looking at the medium and long-term fundamentals of copper and building a great copper company.
So Ian, last question for you. If I am watching this interview and I go, okay, I like copper, I think 4.6 billion pounds of copper in the ground, and 500 million pounds of molybdenum. It seems kind of interesting at what do you guys at, a $12 million market cap. I'm going to put these guys on my watch list. What am I watching out for over the remainder of the year in terms of timelines, company goals, that sort of stuff?
I mentioned some key points. One is there was one drill hole drilled in 2022, but we haven't drilled any drill holes in the project since, because there was an election in the country, and we know that we have a $1 billion type asset. And we knew it was a politically charged environment, and we went back to what did we learn to advance Mirador in Ecuador? What did we learn to advance Cobre Panama in Panama? Is getting back to those fundamentals of building some significant strength locally, a reputation nationally that drives political will. Mocoa, if it was advanced as a project today, would be the largest metals project in the history of Colombia. It's a national level type project. So you have to get your ducks in a row and think of more than just 6 months. But right now, I think we've built that base for the project, and we look forward to starting exploration again before the end of the year. So that's the number one piece of news everybody should be looking for, is when this project is restarting, because when we know the quality of the results it can put out, the type of news flow it could be put out. So everything is kind of pre-set up. We have access to capital from Fiore. We have a great team put into place. We've been doing the work on the ground, and so that is really when people should start paying attention, when they hear that things are moving forward on the project.
Well, Ian, I think you guys got a very interesting story, and I think that for those investors who are looking for some torque in copper, you're a name that they should take a look at. So I appreciate you sitting down here and telling the story, and I wish you the best of luck on your project.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to telling more of that story, because there's lots of details to go over.